Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and I am here to introduce you to college admissions representatives and other professionals in the field of college admissions. Our purpose is to serve you, the students and parents, so that you may gain insight straight from the people who ultimately make the decisions. Regardless of whether you apply to a particular school being highlighted in a given episode, you should listen to all of them, as each guest will give you tremendous insight and advice on every aspect of the college admissions process, prompting you to come up with your own follow-up questions for when you visit campus or meet with a college admissions representative yourself. Don't forget to visit our website, www.collegeadmissionstalk.com, or the show notes of each episode to access the alphabetical list of all the colleges available with the related audio link to the right of each school. The alphabetical list provides you with on-demand access to all of the episodes so that you may listen whenever you wish. And if you want to receive links to episodes before they are released on the podcast, along with other related resources, please fill out the email opt-in form also available on our website and in the show notes of each episode. Lastly, please email me with any questions or comments at collegeadmissionstalk@gmail.com. So are you ready? Let's talk about it. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome back Charles Cammack, who's the Director of Recruitment, and Kaitlyn Marshall, who's the Assistant Director at the University of Miami. Now, Charles and Kaitlyn were with us back on episode 36, and it's such an honor and a pleasure to have them here again for a follow-up conversation. Welcome, Kaitlyn and Charles. How you guys doing today?
We're doing good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm so happy to have you. How about you, Charles? How you doing?
Glad to be back, John. Truly honored.
Well, you guys are awesome, and it was a great episode 36, so I highly recommend anybody still interested in the University of Miami, in addition to listening to this conversation, you owe it to yourself to listen to episode number 36, which is still extremely relevant. So let's start with you, Kaitlyn. What would you say are some of the things that you love about the University of Miami, both on and off your campus?
I will say, as someone who kind of moved down the East Coast, I started in New York, made my way all the way down to the south, very tip of Florida. The liveliness of Miami and the liveliness of South Florida as a whole is extremely special. I absolutely love it. There's always something to do. It's a lot of fun, specifically on our campus. It's a very lively campus as well. I think that echoes, through our community and on our campus and then off of our campus as well. So it's very lively, but we also are a pretty tight-knit community on our campus. We do have about 10,000 undergraduate students, which I know can sound like a lot to people, but in retrospect, it's not that many. So we do have a pretty tight-knit campus. We have this saying, and anyone who attends really any of our events will hear it, and it sounds cheesy, and it is a little bit cheesy. We will all admit it. But Canes Care for Canes is something that really runs through our blood here at the University of Miami. We all really do care for each other, whether that's our staff members, faculty, students, alumni, especially in the area, etc. It is a gigantic family, and it's really something that is super unique to be a part of because it's nothing I've ever experienced before. And I think that a lot of our students would agree, staff members as well. So both on and off our campus, it's extremely lively, but it's also just a gigantic family that feels really special to be a part of.
Well, that's fantastic. Charles, is there anything that you want to add to Kaitlyn's introduction?
The only thing I would add to Kaitlyn's is there are many ways to describe UM. I think diversity is a word that gets thrown out a lot, but what I would unpack within that is it's an immersive experience in every sense of that word. So from racial ethnicities and the backgrounds that we have represented not only on campus, but within the greater Miami area, to the academic offerings, to the interactions that students can have from a social standpoint, and clubs and organizations, and really how you'll be challenged to have a global mindset, not just thinking about what happens here in the States, but what ultimately happens abroad as well. And so I think that's one of my favorite things about UM and how they continue to sort of expand and build upon that as a foundation for the institution.
Well, I love how you guys are talking about the liveliness of Miami, the global mindset that it fosters, not only on your campus and beyond. 10,000 undergraduate students, which certainly brings a lot of diversity and an immersive experience. And this is something that I want the students to really hear, because when you're researching a college, you're looking for fit. So if you want to be near a city, on a thriving campus near the beaches, if you like warm weather, the University of Miami is definitely at the top of most people's list if that's in fact what you're looking for. Would you agree, Kaitlyn?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's your location and all the great things that you offer on and off your campus. So, what else can you tell us about anything new going on at Miami, or any recent developments or changes that prospective students should be aware of since our last conversation, Kaitlyn?
For sure. So, one thing that I am really excited to highlight is this new program that the University of Miami is now offering specifically for students interested in business and engineering related fields. So, it's known as the Innovation, Technology, and Design major. And so that is focused on, like I said, engineering and business students. Now, not only those programs, but really focused on there's a study abroad aspect that goes along with it. There's an internship aspect that goes along with it, but really the main core of it is that hands-on experience. So within the Innovation, Technology, and Design program, it's a very small group. So the first cohort, I believe, was at the end of 2022. So again, very small group that we have right now, and we're really excited to bring the next round of students in to start experiencing this program. There is a design challenge every single semester, which is pretty cool as well because there's a presentation that needs to be done. Usually that accompanies a business plan, depending on what the design challenge is. So again, it's an opportunity for that hands-on experience. Internships, like I mentioned, that is a focus of that program because it also is a graduation requirement for that program. So an internship, at least one, must be completed for that program. Additionally, another fun little piece to it is that students can actually get their degree within 3 years. So it kind of condenses the amount of time. But that's not to say that they won't have the opportunity to spend their 4 years at the University of Miami, but really elsewhere because students in that program, like I said, will finish their degree in 3 years. But if they would like to extend that to a fourth year, then they can go ahead and add on a study abroad experience to go along with them to get them to those 4 years. So if they want to maximize that opportunity, that is a great way to do so. So I'm really excited about that program because it's just another thing that we do to really prepare our students for the workforce because they're getting study abroad experience if they would like it, but they also have to do those internships. They have to do those design challenges. So it's just a robust program that not only prepares them academically, but also for their post-grad plans later on.
Well, I'm glad I asked that question because you talked about the new major, innovation, technology, and design, which incorporates business and engineering. As we know, more and more students are looking to enter fields like this, not just engineering, but having, for example, the business component to it. You mentioned how it also involves a study abroad component and internships, which, of course, there's plenty to choose from, I'm sure, around the great city of Miami. And I love how you talked about the fact that it's a 3 year program if you choose, but certainly students can take the entire 4 years to complete it. So, in terms of anything new since our last conversation, I appreciate that insight, Caitlin. Charles, anything that you want to add?
The only thing I'll add to what Kaitlyn said, I'll go to sort of the building side. She did an incredible job expounding upon sort of the program. So we have three new major projects since that time. We have the Frost Institute for Molecular Science and Chemistry, which is a huge research facility in sort of the central point of our campus. Lakeside Village, which is brand new state of the art residential colleges that debuted now about a year and a half ago. And we're almost completing Centennial Village, or the first part, I should say, of Centennial Village, which will be our brand new first year housing. And then lastly, for our music aficionados and students out there, we have the Knight Center for Music Innovation, which will host a state-of-the-art performance, classrooms, LED screens, you name it. And that is set to debut, I believe, actually, any moment now. And so there's a lot of new buildings, facilities. We know that students and parents alike like to see those things. So just wanted to give some highlights to those as well.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you did, because anytime that there's building going on a campus, you could tell that the school community is truly thriving. You mentioned new research facility, the Lakeside Villages, which are residential colleges, and the Knight Center for Music Innovation, which is always great to have the arts there as well. So we appreciate that. I also read recently that the University of Miami's retention rate is over 90%. The national average is around 70%. So, what is Miami's secret in terms of keeping the students happy and wanting to return year after year?
Yeah, that is a number and statistic I would say that we're extremely proud of. So I think it starts at the beginning and then really translates from there on out. So I know I can speak especially from an admission standpoint and angle. We're kind of at the beginning phases where we're actively recruiting these students and working with them and kind of helping them with whatever they may need through this admission process. And I think that one of the things that I personally have experienced with the University of Miami admission team is that everyone is extremely personable, and they really care about the students. So it's actually very unique in that sense. We are very invested in our students. We all really love what we do, which I think is fantastic to experience at the beginning stages. But I also think that translates to every other office that we have on our campus. That is not just a admission specific. That is the Camner Center. That is study abroad. That is advising. That is all other offices that we have on our campus. I think that is a main piece of it. The second piece I would say is that the University of Miami has really mastered this personal social life and also the academic life, right? So we're a rigorous institution. That's no secret. I think most people will know that based on some research about We are a rigorous institution. We love that from our students, but we also have social initiatives that are constantly happening on our campus all the time. We also have food trucks, farmers markets. We have a food truck every single day, which is super fun. Brings that little, you need a little Cold Stone break. Cold Stone's there every single Monday. Wednesdays, we have the farmers markets where students can go out, explore different vendors from the local area, that sort of thing. So I think it's a balance that we have of that rigorous academic life, but we also provide a social atmosphere as well for those students.
Well, I think it's great that you talk about that you're invested in your students in terms of all of the great resource and programs that you offer on your campus, but also off your campus. And I'm going to repeat what you said earlier: Canes care for Canes, which of course leads to that great retention rate. Charles, anything else that you want to add in terms of the secret with this great retention rate?
The only thing I'll add is we have something called the Kane Success Center, and for students who may be having difficulty, whether it be not just academically, emotionally, they need some support, or even locating the resources that we have on campus to make sure that they are supported, as Kaitlyn said, which starts at the very beginning. It's making sure that those students don't fall through the cracks on the end as well. And so, the reality is, while we are very proud of the over 90%, we're also always thinking about the around 6 or 7% that don't retain. And so what are the ways in which that we can support those students, and making sure that we don't have repeat students in those circumstances? And the Kane Success Center, they dedicate really their time and their energy to figuring that out. So just so families know that both, as Kaitlyn said, on the front end and the back end, we're making sure that students are covered and supported.
Well, I appreciate that you talked about being mindful of all your students. That's great insight. And I love that you talked about the Canes Success Center. Charles and Caitlin, you know that I always put the Office of Undergraduate Admission in the show notes. If there's anything else that you want to include in terms of additional resources for the students and parents, just send them to me. And of course, we'll make them available in the show notes. Now, if possible, visiting campus is an important part to help determine whether or not a school is the right fit for you. And if you can't visit before applying, it's certainly advisable to visit before matriculating, as replicating the feeling one gets when on campus is not easy to do. So, if a student is able to visit campus, what are some of the must see areas to help a student determine whether or not the University of Miami is the right fit for them?
So our campus is actually not that large, which is pretty fun. We have a lake pretty much right in the middle of campus. So whenever we have prospective families and students that come into our office, I always advise them. We give them a piece of paper, shows them campus, but I always say as long as you kind of follow along that lake and just walk around it, you're pretty much going to hit all of the main places. You'll pass by a lot of different things, academic buildings, the dining halls, the residential colleges, all of that good stuff will be passed. So there's everything is centrally located. So as long as you walk around that lake, you are good to go. There's also a lot in the area, especially the immediate area. So there's tons of restaurants and shops to explore right in Coral Gables, where our university is located. I will throw an honorable mention out there, which is Mame. That is my absolute favorite restaurant. Charles knows. That is my absolute favorite restaurant in Coral Gables. Anytime prospective students or families are asking, where should I grab some food on or off campus, Mame will always be my go to recommendation. So I always say my key points: follow along that lake. You always can stop by the admission suite. We have materials for prospective students, pamphlets, as well as maps to hand out. And our staff is always there, as well as student employees, should there be any questions, comments, concerns that arise before or after a tour.
Fantastic. So, getting into the application review process itself, what are the different ways a student may apply to the University of Miami? And is there a benefit to applying one way over the other in terms of being accepted or for merit based scholarship consideration?
For sure. So we have four different admission plans. In chronological order, we have early decision one, early action, early decision two, and regular decision. So if you're unfamiliar with early decisions, early decision one and two are binding plans. Simply the same plan, just two different deadlines. If someone needs maybe a little more time to prepare their application with early decision, they have until January 1st, rather than early decision one. That is early decision two has until January 1st, and then early decision ones is due November 1st. So same exact plans, just two different deadlines. We have those, and then early action and regular decision are those non-binding plans. So there are four different ways to apply. We are very transparent in the fact that early decision does show us the utmost demonstrated interest and engagement, which is something that we will take into account and something that we will look at. With that, there are scholarship opportunities, right? So we have two different types. We have premier scholarships and merit scholarships. So those premier scholarships are for students who apply either early decision one or early action. They're automatic consideration. There is nothing else extra that needs to be done, but again, only for those who apply early decision one and early action. There are also merit scholarships. Merit scholarships are for all students who apply, no matter the admission plan. So every single student who applies to the University of Miami as a first year student will be automatically considered for those merit scholarships. There is no extra scholarship applications, nothing else that needs to be done. Like I said, it's automatic. So those are the scholarship opportunities that are given to all applicants.
Fantastic. And I'm glad that you mentioned ED1 and later on you have an ED2, which are both binding for a couple of reasons. Number one, in terms of scholarship students, if you don't want to apply ED1, which is binding, it's important to apply early action if you want to be considered, in this case, for the Premier Scholarship, which is in addition to merit scholarships that the University of Miami offers. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, though, that wasn't in the question here, Caitlin, a lot of students that apply ED1, they get deferred. And automatically they think that that means they're rejected. That's it. Their chances of going to the University of Miami are over. And deferred means it's not a yes for now, but maybe later, right? You're going to be deferred to regular decision. So, what advice would you give to those students who are deferred, who think that they're rejected? Any insight that you could give to those students?
Yeah, so any applicants who are deferred to regular decision, um, that is simply just, oh, we'll review it again later. That is not a no. Of course, it is not necessarily a yes right then. It's just we're going to pause on this for now. We're going to review it at a later date once we have a better idea of our applicant pool. So it's simply just a pause on the application. We'll come back to it. We'll re-review. And that is all it is. It's not a closed door. None of that. Just we'll take a look at it a little bit later.
Well, we appreciate that insight. Thank you so much. And of course, the transcript is obviously the most important part of the academic portion of any application. That's where you get to see the work that the students did in high school and determine whether or not they're able to handle the rigor once they're on your campus. So, can you walk us through what are you looking for when reviewing the transcript? And does it differ based on a student's intended major?
Yes, so it does not necessarily differ based on the intended major. When we're looking at a transcript, there is also no set of mandatory coursework that needs to be taken. So we don't require, for example, 2 years of a foreign language, nothing like that. No mandatory coursework at all for admission. With that, what we do really look for is those 5 core subjects on the transcript. So we look at English classes, science classes, social studies / social science classes, math, and then foreign languages are the 5 core subjects that we really pay attention to in the review of a transcript and in the review of an application as a whole. So again, no mandatory coursework, but we do look at those core subjects.
So, do you take electives into consideration when calculating the overall GPA?
It depends on the elective. That really gets into the nitty gritty. We have a pretty nailed down process, so I can't go into detail too much. It depends on the actual elective. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It just depends.
Understood, and thank you so much. So, when reviewing applications from various high schools, obviously you get applications from throughout the country and beyond. How do you take into account when one student's high school may offer close to 30 advanced placement courses while someone else's only offers 5?
Yeah, so that's when the school report becomes our best friend on the admission side. So if you ever hear anyone talking about a school report, especially for applicants, but you're not familiar with what that document is, it is a document that will be submitted by a school official. It provides us the context of the school. So it usually will have that exact information of, hey, here's how many AP classes we offer, if any, here's how many honors classes we offer, if any, so on and so forth. So we use that to take into account the opportunities given to an applicant, because of course it would not be fair to look at one applicant who was able to take 8 APs because they had 30 of them offered versus another applicant who took 1 AP because they only had 5 of them offered. That wouldn't necessarily be fair to compare those two because they weren't given the same opportunities. So that school report really comes into play with the AP classes for sure.
Understood. Thank you so much. And I know that the University of Miami, like many other schools, is in fact test optional. Can you share the percentage of students that apply and who are ultimately admitted that did not submit their test scores? And does this change at all based on intended major? For example, does your nursing program or any other competitive major require that the students submit test scores for that specific program?
Yeah, definitely a question we get often as far as testing is concerned. It is a relatively new concept. Data is pretty limited as far as what I can share on this topic, but what I can tell you is that last year, about 50% of the applicants did apply with test scores, and about 50% of students who were admitted to the university had test scores. So it's really an even, or a 50-50 split down the middle for those who apply with test scores and then also who are admitted with test scores.
I appreciate that. And beyond the academic achievements, what kind of extracurricular activities or experience do you value when evaluating applications? And again, does it differ based on intended major?
So it does not differ based on intended major. There are 2 key things that we are looking for within that extracurricular activity section on that application, and that's leadership and consistency. So consistency can be seen via the number of hours per week, the number of weeks per year for how many years. That's a way consistency can be seen. Leadership can also come in many forms, which is something I like to highlight and take a second to talk about. The most common form of leadership I feel people think of is being the president of a club or organization, secretary, that sort of thing. Those are all fantastic examples of leadership, but that's not the only form in which leadership will pop up on an application. For example, for an applicant who is perhaps a primary caretaker within their home, steps up as far as their siblings are concerned, they're in a single parent household, so some of the responsibilities fall on them. That is a form of leadership that we take into account. Similarly, if someone has a job and maybe they're a shift leader or shift manager within that job, that is another form of leadership. So there's many different ways that leadership can come about on an application. So if you're thinking you're applying to the University of Miami and you're not a president of this club or organization because you work 20, 25 hours a week, something to that effect, that is totally okay because leadership will pop up in many different forms. And so just keep that in mind. Don't get discouraged if your club or organization participation is maybe a little bit limited or leadership in that aspect is a little bit limited, because there's other opportunities to display your leadership qualities.
Well, I love how you talked about leadership and consistency, specifically about leadership coming in many forms. And we know the typical forms of leadership, students that have been part of clubs for 3 years, 4 years throughout high school. But I really appreciate how you spoke about leadership in terms of someone who might be the primary caretaker in their home. Maybe they need to take care of a younger sibling. Maybe it's an older relative. I spoke to a student recently who they were a caretaker in terms of the fact that they had to take a parent to the doctor because the parent does not speak English. And so the student had to be there to translate for their parent. These are definitely huge forms of leadership that Kaitlyn mentioned. If this applies to you students, if you hold a job, if you're a caretaker at home, definitely add it to your activity sheet. And also, this gives insight to the admissions representative that perhaps because of all of the great things that you do at home, which is so important, or like Kaitlyn said, maybe you hold a job, that might be the reason why you don't participate in 3, 4, 5 activities, whatever it is, in your school because of all the other great things that you do. So make sure you include anything and everything so that the admissions representatives get a full picture of who you are. Is that correct, Kaitlyn and Charles?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And during your time at admissions, I know you've seen a wide range of application essays. Are there any common pitfalls that you recommend students avoid in their essays? And what qualities or themes do you find resonate well in admissions offices?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I am known to nerd out on in our office is artificial intelligence, also known as AI, slash chat GPT, often go hand in hand. We have seen definitely an uptick in those essays
Mhm.
this year. We know them, we see them, we can recognize them. So I think it's worth mentioning that there is an authentic voice that we appreciate within essays that can often be lost with artificial intelligence. That truly is up to the applicant's own discretion, whether or not they want to use it and take that route, completely up to them. With that said, we are able to tell when there is a lack of original voice or authenticity within an essay. That's what we're looking for. We're looking to learn more about the applicant and hear more about them. And again, a huge piece of that is their writing voice because it is an essay. So just keeping that in mind when the essay is being written, I think is super important. It's very easy to use things like that. ChatGPT, I mean, it can get the essay done in 30 seconds and you're good to go. But that really is our opportunity to learn about the applicant. So we really appreciate when applicants will take the time to allow us to do so.
Well, I appreciate that. And especially the fact that you talked about how you could very easily determine an essay that was written by ChatGPT as opposed to a student using his or her authentic original voice. So great insight. I also received some inquiries from parents asking about AP, IB, and dual enrollment classes and whether or not schools accept them for credit. So, does the University of Miami accept AP, IB, or dual enrollment classes for credit?
We do, we do. So we have an AP credit equivalency website as well, and I can send that on over to you to include in the show notes so that
Great.
prospective students and families can reference it. So yes, we do have an AP credit equivalency webpage that says, here's what you need on the test, here's what it would transfer over as. And then for dual enrollment, we also have the credit equivalencies that will come in. Those are taken for credit. It is done on a case by case basis. So we do not have necessarily a website that breaks it down of here's the dual enrollment class that you've taken, here's what it would transfer over as, all done on a case by case basis once we get those transcripts and once a student is admitted to the university. But we absolutely do take those credits.
Well, I appreciate that. And can you explain what opportunities the University of Miami offers students that may have had an IEP while in high school in terms of helping to ensure that they continue to be successful once they're on your campus?
For sure. So we have what's known as the Camner Center on our campus. So that's where all accommodations are really done through, as well as that Kane Success Center that Charles previously has mentioned. Both of those combined are really for academic success. They can be. So whether it's tutoring, special accommodations, that sort of thing, it's all done through the Camner Center. And then the Kane Success Center is there as well to be additional support for those students. But the Camner Center will be their best friend for sure.
Well, I appreciate that. And this has been a phenomenal follow up episode. Before I ask the last question, I'm going to ask either you, Kaitlyn, or Charles. Is there a question I didn't ask that you wish I had, or a topic that you wish we covered that just didn't come up yet in the conversation? In other words, it's just an opportunity to throw anything else out there to the students and their parents who are listening.
I'll let you take it, Charles.
um, the only thing that I was going to mention, and this is kind of related to essays, but really to the entire applicant process, is for students to not shy away from leaning into the skills that they have. I think a lot of times in this process, it focuses on certain skills. Case in point, there's a book that I love called Quiet by Susan Cain, and it outlines this idea that the world really is catered to extroverted people, but in reality it's not that black and white, right? Most of us, if anything, it's 50-50, right? And then there's a subsection of us who are ambiverts. I'm nerding out about this, but what I'm trying to get at to you is that there is much more diversity than we realize in terms of the applicant pool, and both we as the reviewers, so those of us on the admission side, understand that. And we really want to encourage students to lean into that as well. And so whether it relates to the essay writing, if you are a orator, if you're better at speaking, if you are a musician, right, maybe expressing yourself first in that capacity and then translating that to the page might be an easier way for you in the essay process. Maybe for your application process, as you're going through your extracurricular activities, as Kaitlyn outlined, there's leadership that you've displayed in a lot of different areas, but you're thinking inside of this linear box that sometimes we're prescribed to. And I think that's the great thing about this podcast is John is trying to illuminate to you many different ways and areas that you can apply for within a vast array of schools that you can choose from, right? And so that is the one thing that I would challenge, especially as we're thinking about AI and things becoming more robotic in nature. I would strongly urge you to push against that, and to really lean into the unique ways that you already are, right? And so, yeah, I guess the question for that is how can we sort of continue to explore this application process as we move towards this sort of AI driven world? Well, that's for you to lean into continuing to be you.
Lean into you and continue to be you. Like you said, don't shy away from the skills you have. Share your unique characteristics, students. And I think it's very important to just repeat that anything that you don't share with the admissions representatives, by the way, if you're an extrovert, introvert, whatever it is, anything that you don't share, leaving it up to them to speculate when they're reviewing the process. So, as Charles said, don't shy away from sharing the skills that you have and don't be bashful. So I really appreciate that, Charles. Thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation. Unfortunately, it does lead us to the last question, which is what are your top three pieces of advice you would provide students and their parents getting ready for the college admissions process?
I've got two logistical ones, and then we'll end with a little bit of a nicer one. So I will say, for those who are applying to financial aid can oftentimes feel like a lot. So definitely make sure that you are staying on top of those deadlines, communicating, whether it be with your admission officer. Everyone does have a designated admission officer based on where you attend high school. And so you may communicate with them, see if they can help you out. But there's also direct contacts within the financial aid office, within their email and then their phone. You may give them a call to speak with them about your financial aid. We have resources here for you, so feel free to use them, because financial aid, it can be confusing, and sometimes support is needed, and that's what we're here for. So just make sure that you are asking for help when you need it and are using the resources that our university offers, or really any university offers. Sticking on the essay trend, answer the prompt. That is always one of my main pieces of advice. We have this, especially the supplemental essay, we have this very robust, nice prompt that we put together for everyone. So make sure that you are taking the time to actually answer that prompt. And then last, but absolutely not least, the college admission process can oftentimes be very stressful for all involved. So I think it's very important and worth mentioning that you should have grace and patience for others, but for yourself especially, because it is a lot. It can be overwhelming. Sometimes it can feel a little bit suffocating. So having grace and patience for yourself and others as well is going to be super important in this journey. Also, take time to enjoy it. You'll never really be able to do this again. So take time to enjoy it. Live in the moment a little bit, as cheesy as it may sound. But grace and patience is definitely important. I'll hand it over to Charles.
That's amazing. Kaitlyn kind of stole my last one, admittedly, which really is all three. My advice sums up into really this idea right here. You can get a lot of things back. The one thing that you cannot get back is time. And so I would strongly urge you to enjoy your time, as Kaitlyn said, within your high school experience. I'm not even just talking about the application process. I'm just saying high school in general, especially those of you who are seniors and you are embarking on some of the most precious and priceless moments that you'll have, whether it be with friendships. Even your parental relationships change post high school. So it's just things to think about and really to embrace. There is a lot of time for the other things, but the time that you have in high school, you will never get back. And so truly embrace that, as Kaitlyn said.
Well, those are tremendous pieces of advice. And I'm so glad that I had both of you back on this follow-up episode. You were both amazing. The University of Miami is lucky to have you, as were we on this podcast episode. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And to everyone out there, good luck with your college search and best wishes to all. Take care. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP. I want to welcome back Sean Patel, who's the CEO and founder of Prep Expert. Sean, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, John. Just wanted to do a quick shout out for an amazing deal that we have for college admissions process podcast listeners. We're offering 30% off all Prep Expert SAT and ACT courses and tutoring. It's live online. We've got the best score improvement guarantees in the industry. You'll get taught by 99 percentile instructors. And you can save 30% off when you go to the show notes of the College Admissions Process podcast. Grab your discount code for 30% off and click the link in the show notes.
Thank you, Sean. So great to have you again. And to everyone out there, please note that if you make a purchase through any of our affiliate links, the podcast gets a commission. But rest assured that we would only promote products that we believe in and feel would benefit our listeners. Thank you all, and best wishes.